Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers. We begin today in Rwanda, where French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived in the capital Kigali in a bid to mend relations that have been seared for more than 2 decades. While speaking at the Genocide Memorial in Kigali, Mr. Macron says though France was not an accomplice in the country's 1994 genocide, he's asking for forgiveness due to the fact that France did not listen to those who warned about the situation. Last week at the Paris Summit on Africa, Mr. Macron told journalists that he had agreed with Rwanda's President Paul Kagame to establish a new page of relations. The head of the former junta in Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta, has declared himself the country's transitional president after stripping the interim president and former prime minister of their powers. This comes as President Bandor and the Prime Minister Mokhtar Ouane were earlier released from military detention. They were taken to a military base late on Monday in what was seen as Mali's second military coup in 9 months. The move followed a cabinet reshuffle in which 2 army officers involved in the previous coup lost their jobs. Colonel Goïta complained that the ex-president had failed to consult him about the new cabinet. Meanwhile, the United Nations says it has continued to follow the situation in Mali with some concern. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric says the peacekeeping mission is working closely with ECOWAS to support the country's transition process.
And an update for you from Mali, where the peacekeeping mission on the ground continues to work closely with the delegation from ECOWAS, which is currently in Bamako, in the capital of Mali. Our special representative and head of the peacekeeping mission, El Ghassim took part in the meetings that the ECOWAS delegation was having. The mission continues to support the efforts of ECOWAS and calls on all actors concerned to cooperate fully with a view to a rapid resumption of the normal course of the transition within the framework provided by the Charter. It is crucial that this crisis be resolved urgently, as it constitutes an additional challenge that would negatively affect the implementation of the peace agreement. For his part, the Secretary General continues to follow the situation in Mali with concern and continues to be engaged. Yesterday, he had a couple of phone calls, one with Moussa Faki, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, as well as the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, in his capacity as the chair of the ECOWAS Heads of Government and State Authority.
In the meantime, the U.S. State Department says it'll halt its security assistance to Mali following the latest political developments, which saw the departure of 2 civilian leaders. However, the U.S. says it will continue supporting efforts by the Economic Community of West African States and the African Union in working to resolve the current crisis. It further adds that a democratic civilian-led government presented the best opportunity to achieve security and prosperity in Mali and the wider Sahel region. The U.S. reaction comes in the wake of a jihadist insurgency in the Sahel countries, threatening to spread to the rest of West Africa. Let's get more on the story from African Affairs analyst Achike Chude. Thanks for joining us today on the program. So there's been a second coup in less than a year in Mali, yet the junta is saying that the transition to civilian rule in 2022 is still on track. How realistic is this? Okay, we'll get back to him as soon as we can. Seem to be having connection problems there. Let's take you through some other stories. The U.S. President Joe Biden has called for a ceasefire in Ethiopia's conflicts in the northern region of Tigray. Mr. Biden also demanded an end to large-scale human rights abuse. The fighting, now in its 7th month, has killed thousands and forced 2 million people from their homes. The U.S. president also highlights the possibility of famine. The country pits the Ethiopian army and its Eritrean allies against a regional Tigrayan force. It began last November when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered an attack on forces loyal to the region's former ruling party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, after they had overrun federal army bases. Egypt and the United States have agreed to work together to reinforce a ceasefire between Israel and Palestinian militants. This comes as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits Cairo and Amman on a regional tour. Egypt has long-standing relations with both sides in the conflict and played a key role in brokering the ceasefire after 11 days of violence in coordination with the United States.
Here today in Amman, my conversation with His Majesty touched on, again, a range of topics, including the urgent work we need to do together to meet humanitarian and reconstruction needs in Gaza, while ensuring that the Palestinian people, not Hamas, benefit from this assistance. Our meetings today in Cairo and Amman, indeed this whole trip, reflect a fundamental reality. If we want to avoid a return to the harrowing violence of recent weeks, the countries of this region need to help and support one another. We had a lengthy discussion, exchange on human rights today in the meeting with President al-Sisi, which followed on President Biden's conversation with President al-Sisi some days ago. I think you know that President Biden takes the issue of human rights and our commitment to human rights very seriously indeed. He's asked us to put it at the heart of our foreign policy, and that's exactly what we're doing, and that was reflected in the conversations that we had today.
Suspected Islamist militants have killed at least 22 civilians in an overnight raid on villages near the town of Beni in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The attack comes more than 3 weeks after the government declared martial law in North Kivu and Ituri, two provinces bordering Uganda, in an attempt to stem worsening bloodshed. A 4-month-old baby was found on the back of one of the victims, one of 7 children from the same family, believed to have been orphaned in the latest violence. According to the Kivu security tracker, more than 1,200 civilians have been killed in Beni territory since November 2019, when the army launched an operation aimed at ending the ADF's insurgency. And tens of thousands of people have been evacuated from the city of Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo over fears of another volcanic eruption. Local authorities say Mount Nyiragongo could erupt once again with little warning. Due to this threat, the United Nations is relocating half of its aid workers from Goma.
The United Nations says over 20,000 people are homeless and 40 still missing in the aftermath of Saturday evening's volcanic eruption. The eruption sent rivers of lava towards Goma, killing at least 31 people and destroying more than 3,000 homes. The lava stopped just 300 meters short of Goma Airport, the main hub for aid operations in the east of Congo. However, the UN says it will temporarily relocate around 250 non-essential staff and around 1,500 of their dependents to the city of Bukavu, around 50 kilometers further south.
We have a large presence of United Nations agencies. We have more than 2,500 people in the city of Goma, and therefore it is our obligation to our staff and to the families of our staff to distinguish those which are essential, critical for emergency response and emergency response coordination of what are not. In any case, we are not going to work in these conditions. So we are in the process of relocating the personnel to help them find safety conditions for a period until the volcanic event can be declared over.
The UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs also says that ash cloud caused by the eruption has closed down airports in Goma and Bukavu and is likely to cause respiratory diseases. People who fled their homes have lost valuable possessions, including motorcycles that were either consumed by the lava flow or looted. More than 200 small and medium earthquakes have since caused cracks in buildings and streets in Goma, just 15 kilometers from Nyiragongo. No deaths have so far been reported, but the cracks have caused panic among residents unsure if the danger has passed.
Personally, it scares me seeing this crack. I am afraid because I have never seen anything like this. Those who saw the 2002 eruption told us that where a crack passes can be catastrophic. Now, when you see a crack after a recent eruption, you're worried that you're in danger. It gives me such a phobia just thinking about going to Bukavu.
The UN says a 1.7-kilometer river of lava that blocks the main road north from Goma is still too hot to be removed, preventing trade and aid deliveries to one of the most food-insecure places in Africa. But the government says some work has begun on restoring the road.
And here in Nigeria, the Lagos State government is marking this year's Children's Day event with an event at the Police College in Ikeja. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu inspected the march past by various public schools, the first of such in more than a year as the COVID-19 restrictions prevented large gatherings and celebrations. It's a familiar style of celebration at this year's Children's Day event in Lagos State, as the children are allowed to gather at the Police College in Ikeja. Things were different last year as the COVID-19 pandemic made this impossible, and the state government had to visit some students in their homes.
Welcome our dear Governor.
Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, dressed as a Boy Scout, is here with his team to celebrate with the children. The State Commissioner for Education highlights the need for this year's event to take place.
We know what happened during COVID. There was massive learning slide as children were forced to stay indoors. They had to live in an unusual way, and this led to a lot of emotional and even physical trauma and all sorts of abuses. And so it's really topical. I must let you know that we are working tirelessly under our amiable governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, to provide all that you need so that you optimize your potential.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The motto is do it right, be the best.
Then a parade by different public schools.
Thank you very much, Mr. Juan. Government Senior College, Agege. Move on, thank you. Government Senior College, Agege. Girls Senior High School.
This year's event is perhaps a compensation by the state government after a year of disruption of academic and other activities by the COVID-19 pandemic, a global scourge that also shaped the theme for the 2021 International Children's Day, unites to reverse the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on children. Namibia's President Hage Geingob and First Lady Monica Geingob are in isolation after both tested positive for COVID-19. The Namibian presidency Twitter account says they are both in good spirits. According to data published by the World Health Organization, Namibia has recorded 53,432 cases of the virus, including 779 deaths. The country has also administered 67,984 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. Meanwhile, Uganda's Kyambogo University has suspended in-person learning after 8 coronavirus cases were confirmed at the institution. Vice-Chancellor Professor Eli Katunguka says that many other students are showing symptoms of COVID-19 but have refused to get tested. The authorities in Uganda have reported an overall surge in coronavirus infections over the last 2 weeks. The Health Ministry has announced the beginning of a second wave, with the confirmed cases now at 44,281 and more than 500,000 people vaccinated. A government task force on the pandemic is scheduled to meet today to analyze the numbers and they issue more guidelines. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says it's totally unacceptable that Africa is still lagging behind on the issue of COVID-19 vaccination. In his remarks to the Africa Dialogue series, the Secretary General says that vaccines must be affordable and available everywhere. The 2021 edition of the ADS celebrates Africa's identity, culture, history, and achievements. It also brings together key stakeholders to discuss challenges and opportunities for the continent.
It's totally unacceptable that vaccines are not now fully available to the African continent, that Africa is dramatically lagging behind in vaccination because of lack of vaccines available to the African continent. I do believe that vaccines must be affordable and available everywhere. And that is the reason why I've been insisting with the G20 countries to create a global vaccination plan to reach everybody everywhere. But of course, vaccination is very important, but not enough. I'm worried to see in the projections of the IMF and the World Bank that there is an expected growth of the international economy of 6% this year, but only 3.2%, if I remember well, in the African continent. And it's absolutely essential that African countries receive the financial support they need at the present moment to protect their citizens and to be able to relaunch their economies.
Some startups in Nigeria are trying to help youths meet the global demand for software developers, even when they don't own a laptop. The young man in our next report is one of such and teaches people to write coding using their mobile phones.
Samuel regularly tells his students that everything they need to write a software code can be found on their mobile phones. He writes HTML codes on his phone, which are displayed on a monitor in a tiny classroom in Yaba, a Lagos suburb commonly referred to as Nigeria's Silicon Valley. His students look up at the big screen and down at the smaller one in their hands.
To be truly mobile, you have to use a mobile phone. In the environment where we live in, there are more people with access to mobile phones than with PCs. So by teaching them how to code on their mobile phones, we're effectively giving them a tool to work, whether they have a PC or not.
Coding skills are seen by many young Nigerians as a way to earn money from clients based anywhere in the world. Job opportunities are scarce in Nigeria, a country of 200 million inhabitants. Two-thirds of people aged 15 to 34 are either unemployed or underemployed. Anyele, who runs free classes for beginners and charges $210 for courses aimed at professionals in one of many Lagos companies offering to teach aspiring software developers. The most widely known is Andela, a software training company that has received funding from Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg's foundation. Chinonso Okafo, one of Anyele's students who is now building websites for clients, said using his phone means he can continue working after his laptop runs down when the electricity cuts out.
So there was a time, I had a client and I needed to meet a deadline. So in order for me to meet that deadline, there was no light and my laptop was down. So I had to move those folders into my phone and continue on my phone in order to meet up those deadlines.
Last year's $200 million acquisition of Nigerian fintech firm Paystack by Silicon Valley giant Stripe and the $1 billion valuation of local payments company Flutterwave have shown what is possible. Joseph Agumbiade founded Univel City, a company that trains software developers. The tech entrepreneur with over 20 years' experience says this is a game changer in a world with ready jobs for software developers.
If you don't find job locally, they are international job. And in the international job, if you don't find the job in Europe, you'll find it in America. If you don't find America, you find it in Asia. If you don't get a full-time job, there's a freelance gig opportunity. If you don't find freelance, you can start your own startup. And if you cannot, you can run a small agency where you basically build apps and software for people. So, it is the age of software development, pretty much.
But some struggle to see phones as anything but an entertainment device, said Samuel, who identified that perception as a mental block that many fail to overcome.
Having to deal with that perception of we are teaching people how to code on their mobile and then they are assuming it's something childish or something that is not professional enough is something that we had to deal with.
It's about
Samuel's class is not replacing laptops as a primary coding tool, but to enable the use of phones as a beginner tool for those who do not have personal computers, and as an add-on for professionals who would want to work on the go with very minimal tool.
That's Network Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm Joshua Rogers.